Oh, you don't want bread.
His 90th birthday celebration for our uncle Syd Kronenthal. Today here we have all of Syd's 5 nephews and nieces, and we welcome all of you who know Syd from so many different walks of life. We're delighted everybody is here, and each of us would like to offer a toast in honor of our uncle. There's a beautiful Jewish blessing that we recite when we celebrate something new or wondrous or special or whatever, especially something happy. So I think there's no better occasion than this one to offer this blessing in honor of Syd and the milestones that we're celebrating with him today. And here's the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechianu, Kiyamanu, Kiyanu, Lashman Hazeh. Amen. Blessed are you, God, King of the universe, who's granted us life, has sustained us, and has enabled us to reach this marvelous occasion. To Uncle Syd, cheers. And now I'd like to call on my cousin, HB.
We all need to thank Dan and Jean for creating this amazing event. On the old Santa Fe Chief, I think it took us 2.5 days from Chicago. And it was the first time I saw mountains or palm trees or oil rigs or the light that is so special to Southern California.
And it was in Chicago?
He came from Chicago, and it was all mixed up with the larger-than-life character that was my Uncle Syd. For me, there was no distinction between the place and the person. He embodied Los Angeles, and when I think about that now, it was less the confused imagination of a little girl than it was my reality. And as I look around, I think probably the reality for many of you. He has marked this place as much as the place marked him. And so, please join me in toasting my remarkable Uncle Syd.
I too want to thank DJ. Is that DJ? What's his name?
Thanks a lot.
I want to thank DJ too for pulling this together, and also Burton was on the invitation committee, so he did a lot of work too on that. You'll see on your candy bar here, it says "Great Party." Little known fact, Syd actually coined this phrase roughly around the time the picture was taken. And he took a copyright out on it. Who knew that you could do that? But anytime this, and you know, it's a big world. Anytime this phrase is uttered, or it's written, or anytime anyone thinks "great party," Syd gets, I forgot what the deal was. It's not too big, but it's a big world. It's a big tale, and Syd's a wealthy guy. So, great party, Uncle Syd!
Well, I guess it's me. I don't have a drink. Does anyone have a drink to loan me? Sorry, toast? Yay! I must be the youngest.
just a little bit older than my little brother, and much younger than my cousins and my sister. But my favorite remembrance of Uncle Syd that has carried on to this day is when we were kids, he would kidnap us from Sacramento or LA or wherever we were in our pajamas and take us out for donuts. Whether it was a big donut here or Sacramento or Little Donuts, it was donuts. And we'd get there, we'd be all excited. My sister liked chocolate. And he'd say, she'll have the chocolate. My brother also liked chocolate, or the one with the sprinkles. He'd say to me, she likes the jelly donuts. I cringed, I hated jelly donuts. But he thought they were my favorite, so every time I got those stinking jelly donuts, and I ate them, just to please my uncle, because he thought I loved jelly donuts. So it was always a jelly donut, but I had brought 2 jelly donuts.
It's hard to believe Uncle Syd used to throw me up so far in the air that I'd be scared. He's not going to do it today. Looking at me, probably no one's going to throw me up ever again. But here's to the guy that took us to donuts and 2 in the morning Tommy burgers when we were single digits in age and all the other good stuff. Happy 90th.
Hi everybody, my name is Mal Nathanson. I'm from the state of Bloomington, New Jersey, and I'm a relative of Syd's. I won't say what it is, because he's got cousins and uncles and aunts, and nephews and nieces, so I don't know where I fit in. But I first met Syd in the early 70s, and I learned that when he would drive, you better have your seatbelt. But he turned out to be a pretty good driver. I'm going to tell a quick little story, and I don't think I'm lying. Okay? He was working with the Dodgers at the time, Walter O'Malley and Buzzy the Daisy, and they'd asked him to meet a young pitcher. And I've told this story on the radio many times back east. And the pitcher's going to meet him, I believe, near Love's Barbecue, which you all remember. And so it was a rainy night, I think it was a Friday night, and the pitcher was Jewish, and Syd being Jewish, were the only 2 Jews in the organization at that time. And Buzzy asked Syd to see if he'll speak in front of a bunch of an organization, a Jewish organization. So the young pitcher met in his car, Syd was driving, and Syd takes his hand out and he says, look, he says, I just want you to get up in front of the audience, just tell a few stories or just be nice. He said, but Mr. Kronenthal, I'm very shy in front of people. He says, don't worry about it. You're Jewish. The rest will talk for itself. Can I have your name? I'm Sanford Koufax. Wow. He turned out to be one of the 5 best pitchers of all time. And as Sydney is one of the best people who we know. And l'chaim, happy 90th to Syd Kronenthal.
I'd like to make a toast. I'm one of the many adopted nephews and I'm sitting at a table with a group of guys who are all good friends of Syd's. Many of them have worked for Syd. And I suddenly understood why I'm sitting at this table, because I served 16 years on the Culver City Council and served as a mayor for 4 years, but I worked for Syd also. So I want to present and give a toast to Syd, who was very special for me. Thank you.
My name is Larry Friedman, and I'm one of the 5% 6 guys that go back to the 50s with Syd. We were kids that grew up in Culver City in what was a really, really unique park system, where we had local playgrounds. And today, when we all get together, all of us that went to high school together, we talk less about high school and more about park routines. So we had, you know, well over 50 years ago. It's amazing. For some of us here, we had an opportunity not only to grow up in the parks, but to work for him later on as coaches at a park. And I think some of us still look back and think, boy, that was the best job we ever had. We worked our way through college, getting able to play basketball every day, and over the line with kids that you grew to love. And it was, for me, a priceless experience. And I think more than anything, it gave an opportunity for 19-year-old kids to get some responsibility where they had a whole park to manage and kids and parents to work with. And I don't think Syd maybe thought about that, but it was a priceless experience. So Syd,
I cannot not to toast to Syd Kronenthal. And one reason for it is that he is here in kind of one of his many changes. But his real, who he really is, we don't even know. That would always show around the 5th or 6th or 20th or whatever of December, because he's a genuine Santa Claus. And so that's where the firemen and the police escort were guarding his sled from one to another park, that most of them, he had something to do with farming, in Culver City, and not only the kids, but the adults, everybody running out of the house to see Santa. And Santa would come out and just pull out whatever candy and stuff. You know, this Santa paid for all that, not from the city money, but his own pocket money. And that was like one of the highlights in my kids over here, growing up in Culver City, and mine too. So I would like to toast to the genuine Santa Claus.
I'd like to follow that remarks, Mayor Jacobs and Uncle Conley. I work for Syd. My name is Ed Rudd, and I worked for Syd for 8 years in the late 70s, early 80s. And I am delighted and want to thank the family for inviting me to be here and all the distinguished guests that are here to recognize this unique individual. And I think of him in terms of leader, mentor, and public servant, but most of all, human servant, to Syd Kronenthal.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stand up and say something after Ed and Olga. I'm the only, all of you are relatives in terms of cousins, etc., but I'm Syd Kronenthal's Japanese son. He's been my father ever since my dad left 28 years ago. Introduced me to Olga 30 years ago. Ted Flanagan, I officiated his wedding, etc., etc. I just know that being a Japanese Jew, and I salute the Syd, my father, Syd Kronenthal.
The spiritual leader for North America for the Shinto religion, and he got baptized with there, for that ceremony, all kinds of things. The Kero home, which is now the home of used to be Jewish Home for the Aged, we were able, together with the Ginsburg family, to move it over to Stephen now, where it's equally as popular, but not quite as popular as the Cairo home. Olga Connolly is probably one of the most coveted Olympians of all time. She was not only 1 or 2 or 3, she was in 5 Olympic teams. And every 4 years it comes up. She was the world record holder and defeated in the biggest upset of the Olympic Games. She upset the Russians, which was unheard of at the time, and who were all disqualified after testing them. But she now has a family of her own, who each one in their own, and has a tremendous background in sports, and mostly at UCLA. But please, when you announce yourself, would you tell a little bit, very, very briefly, what you are in terms of my relation to you as a member of the extended family. And that's all I want to keep my mouth shut here. But nobody likes to sit under, well, and Louis Maxim is going kinesiology professor too. But it wears, so this is a free-for-all thing here, but don't be ashamed to introduce yourself and what your relationship was to me, my life, and what mine was to your life. Very briefly, of course, we've got a meal you have, and we haven't had master ceremony.
That's Melanie.
Johnson,
You want some of
something
mine?
must have happened, right?
Yeah.
Sitting up here with us.
No,
But in any
it's not
event,
alcohol.
at this juncture, I'm going to just keep quiet. But remember, please introduce yourself so people will know who you are.
Dan Jeter, for having this luncheon and this birthday party. Sid, happy birthday. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ross Hawkins, and I've known Uncle Syd for quite a few years. I first remember that he talked me into getting involved with the Western Hemisphere Marathon. I did a rather lengthy interview with him a few years ago, and the man continues to amaze me. Anyway, both of my sons worked for the Parks and Recreation Department in Culver City while Syd was there. Happy birthday, Uncle Syd.
Syd, my name is Dennis Fredrickson, and I'm not a relative, but listening to all of you, I know why I'm here, because I'm among Syd's friends. And I met Syd, I guess, a brief time ago, 40, 50 years ago, it seems like. And he joined the board of directors of TLC, Therapeutic Living Centers for the Blind, which is a 501c3 taking care of multi-handicapped blind. He performed an invaluable role of being on that board, and we formed a friendship with Syd, my wife Molly and I. And I think that's an example. TLC is an example of the selflessness of Syd, how much he gave to that organization. And just having mentioned Rafer Johnson, I think it's Syd who was responsible for having the multi-handicapped blind present at the Special Olympics. And since that time, the organization has been involved in it, and it's been a very meaningful thing. It's very rare in this life that you get to meet a public servant, a man to all mankind who really is selfless and has done so much for every one of us, and particularly for TLC. It's an honor to be here, Syd. Happy birthday.
I'm playing what we grew up with in Culver Culver City. That's the last time I ever tried to explain it. You can't put it into words. You had to have lived it. And we certainly did. Now, with all the accolades, Syd, there was one faux pas in all the years. And I hope you remember this. I was about 13 years old, and I went to Betts Park for a Culver City Comets, Long Beach Nighthawks softball game. 26 innings, the score was 0-0, and the game was canceled. Why, Syd? That's right, the sprinklers went off. But after all these years, today, after wondering who would have won that game, I finally have closure. Happy birthday.
I'm Stan Kelton. I've known Syd since I was 17 years old. In 1951, William Randolph Hearst established a high school journalism program for kids. And in 1968, when the Herald Examiner went on strike, the person who was running that program was a longtime friend of Syd's, Ralph Alexander. And Ralph was left to run the program without the support of the Hearst organization. At that time, Syd stepped in and saved our program. He is the one who helped bring money and bring the ability to keep us surviving. Then in 1981, when Ralph unfortunately passed at an early age, we were left as young people to try to run the organization. Again, Syd was the one who stepped in, got us money, help, and last summer we held our 61st annual journalism workshop for 25 kids at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and we are eternally grateful to Syd. Happy birthday, Syd.
Robert Nathanson, and Syd's another uncle. He's my uncle through marriage. I want to thank my brother for coming out here and my nephew from Philadelphia. I've known Syd since I was probably 11 or 12 years old. It just so happens I grew up in the Valley, but opened my business in Culver City. So I went to Syd after I opened a sewing machine repair business. I had 2 stores in Culver City, both on Washington. And I went to Syd and I said, Syd, who should I know in Culver City to get the government business? You know, the city's business. He says, I'm going to tell you who to talk to, but you're going to have to earn the business. He says, you're not just going to have my name to use to get that business. So I went, I talked to the head of maintenance in Culver City. I did some free sewing machine and vacuum repairs for about a month. But for 25 years, I had their business until I sold my stores. And I have that to thank for to Syd Kronenthal and the weight that he carried in Culver City. He's a wonderful man and a wonderful humanitarian, and we're all here to thank him today.
Okay, can we eat?
I don't see any servers, so.
Well, they're not gonna come in if we keep telling stories.
Oh, are they? What?
We got a story.
This will be a real quick one. My name is Alan Ginsberg, and I'm going to sort of make a claim of knowing Syd probably the longest, or maybe the second longest of anybody in this room. My father's brother, Carrie and Dana's father, married Syd's sister. And they originally met in Chicago, where I live, and where Syd's parents lived, and where Syd lived. So I got to meet Syd in, it was either 1951 or 1952. And even then, I remember him as being a fun guy. We moved to Culver City, and there was Syd, and taking an interest in what I was doing. I was interested in tetherball. Never had that in Chicago. We moved into a house in the Valley, and there was Syd with a tetherball. Years later, I wanted a job with the Los Angeles Recreation Parks while I was going to college. I mentioned that to Syd. When I went to the interview, introduced myself, scared to death, the guy looked at me and said, okay, you're hired. My daughter, many years after that, was at the writing contest that happened to be held at the Culver City Park where Syd worked. She was in high school, it was a competition writing. She was fortunate enough to win that competition. Syd was watching all this and said, I think she should meet some people at the LA Times. I said, okay. Next thing I know, my daughter was having lunch with the publisher, I believe it was, and the editor of the LA Times in downtown LA, and they gave her advice on how to make her career more successful, and she followed that advice, and it worked out very well. And she was also involved in the journalism camp in San Luis Obispo, which led her to going to San Luis Obispo for her 4-year college, where she met her husband, and they still live. So Syd, all these years you've been just wonderful to us, and we really appreciated everything. It's been great. You know, I didn't skip the part about how we used to talk about the problems I had, you know, chasing people on my job, and we'd go to lunch at the, what was the name of that, Ponderosa, and you know, you'd say, hang in there, so thank you, and we're glad to
While
hear
you're
your
standing there, he was one of the agents of the sometimes much hated Internal Revenue Department. He was their agent, traveling all over the world, chasing down the bad guys. And then he comes to this story that I couldn't believe that time, kept me involved in the story. And today we look at the picture today, and he found out the things that he was doing there hurt people that were politicians, and he took an early retirement himself. He was one of the stuff with those kind of people. But he was a top agent. Story details to write a book, and you should write a book.
Very kind family and friends. It's not that I feel that a woman should have the last word. I want to point out one more thing about Mr. Kronenthal. He is not just a quiet man who sits here with his friends around the table, but he is also very actively involved in something very important for humankind, and it's development of prosthetics for people who had the misfortune of being afflicted by some debilitating, accident. And recently, and I wanted to know that he works with the University of Tel Aviv in Israel and was appointed to the board of directors. So, congratulations, Syd. You are
Food is coming in 5 minutes. Let's go hungry. Yeah. Yeah. Talking the way that doesn't I keep talking. I mean, for the food. That's good.
No.